With Jack Miller's move to Pramac Yamaha for the 2025 season being all but confirmed at this point, we now know where every rider will sit at the start of next year. As such, I thought it would be appropriate to make a video covering the rider changes heading into next season. But a video just saying, this rider went here, that rider went there, ooh, ah, would be more boring than being a Franco Morbidelli fan in 2024. Jokes aside, for this video, I'm going to be taking a page out of NBA YouTube's playbook. One common video to make in between seasons is to grade every team's off-season. In other words, rating how they did in terms of trades, executive decisions, and their overall state heading into next season. So in this video, I'm going to be grading every MotoGP team's off-season heading into 2025. Now, I've wanted to make this video for a while. I had the idea before I uploaded my first video on this channel, but I decided to wait, and initially I was going to wait until after this season was completely wrapped up and we had a little bit of a better idea of how everyone's development projects was coming along and which bikes were going to be the clear contenders for 2025 and which bikes would be a little more lacking. But I decided against that for two reasons. The first reason is that it's a little more fun to speculate with a little less knowledge. So we have a decent idea of how everyone's development is going, but some teams could still make a big jump and some teams could still completely screw the pooch. So not knowing exactly how everyone's going to look next year could make this video a lot more interesting to come back to. The second reason, and the more important one, is that I'm really impatient and I want to make the video now. So for this video, I have every single MotoGP team written down on a piece of paper, and I'm going to pull them out one by one, talk about how I think their rider acquisitions went, and we'll give them a grade from A to F. Let's see who's up first. Wow, this is a lot harder to do with one hand than I thought it would be. Alright, first up we have Factory Yamaha. Factory Yamaha is an interesting place to start. Obviously, there have been a lot of rumors going around about their technical development plans for the next couple years, with many people discussing the possibility of them abandoning their longtime inline-4 engine in favor of a V4 platform. Now, I won't be taking any of that into consideration for next year because those changes are rumored to be coming in 2027, and Yamaha's brand new technical director has even said that he doesn't think they'll be competitive until 2026 at the very earliest. So I'm just going to assume that they're going to have a relatively similar bike to the one that they have now heading into next year. In terms of the rider market, Yamaha made pretty much no moves. They simply re-signed both of their riders, Fabio Quartararo and Alex Rins, for the 2025 and 2026 seasons. And I actually really like this move from Factory Yamaha. With the addition of a satellite team in the form of Pramac Yamaha, and that team focusing more on the test rider aspect of things, I think that signing riders who have the capacity to be competitive once they get their development back on track is a really good move. So they're going to be building this new development program alongside these riders, and then by the time they're competitive, they're already going to be as familiar as anyone else with the bikes, and they're going to have the possibility to actually go out and compete for a championship. I am personally of the belief that Fabio Quartararo is a top 5 rider on the grid right now, and he's just been saddled with a very unfortunate bike. Take Aragon for example, where when Pecco Bagnaia fell to the back of the grid, Quartararo actually engaged with him in a battle for position. That is not something I had on my bingo card this year, but he's still clearly a great rider, and granted, while Bagnaia's bike was probably not set up for a fight through the pack, it still shows that Quartararo is absolutely capable of being competitive, if he's put in a position to do so. No big moves were made here, but overall, I think that Yamaha made a pretty good decision considering the position that they're in. I'm going to give them a B+. Alright, next up, we have Factory Aprilia. Aprilia's factory team made some really big signings heading into next year. They chose to get rid of Maverick Vinales, and Aleix Espargaro is of course retiring at the end of this year, so they had both seats open for potential new riders. In their place, they signed Ducati riders Marco Bezzecchi and Jorge Martin, the latter of which is a serious contender for the championship this year. Bezzecchi has put on some strong performances in the past. In the first half of 2023, he was a serious title contender. This season, he's gotten some pretty decent results in the Grand Prix, but has had almost no sprint success. However, he is only in his third season, and I think as a second rider with room to grow, he'll make a great addition to the team. The biggest signing is Jorge Martin, who's arguably the fastest rider on the grid this year. Martin has been in a close title fight with Bagnaia throughout this entire season, and there's a serious possibility that he'll be taking the #1 plate with him when he moves to factory Aprilia. Now, the story of Martin signing with Aprilia is actually really interesting, and we'll get into it a little more when I talk about factory Ducati, mostly because Ducati fumbled the bag really hard with this one. Like, they sort of screwed up pretty bad in my opinion. Basically, after he had a falling out with factory Ducati, Aleix Espargaro, who's a close personal friend of his, called him up and said, "Hey, my seat's going to be open. You should really consider it. You could be the lead rider for a factory and really influence their development going forward." Now, apparently, this sounded pretty good to Martin, who had no interest in riding for Ducati the following year anymore. So, he signed up. Honestly, I'm not sure we've had a great measure of how good of a development rider Martin has been so far, but heading into factory Aprilia, I'm not sure there's a faster guy who you could get to help spearhead your development program. Now, it's pretty accepted that Aprilia's bike this year was a step down from their bike last year, so if they can get back on track for 2025 and produce a competitive bike, it's entirely possible that Martin can continue fighting for a championship. Really, Aprilia's success next year boils down to their ability to produce a good bike. The RSGP24 was a step down from the GP23, but all in all, I think that if they can get back on track and maybe even take a few steps forward, they'll be in a really good spot with these two riders. Overall, I have to give them a solid A. Alright, next on the chopping block. I can't read that. What does that say? Honda Racing. Honestly, the biggest drama with Honda this season has mostly been the fact that Repsol is no longer going to be their name sponsor next year, which is crazy because they have been for like 30 years. My entire life, I've been watching Repsol Hondas. It's like for most of my life, I didn't even realize they were a sponsor. Like, it was just like the name, you know? I mean, not most of my life, but like when I was a kid. You know what I mean. Anyway, aside from that, which I don't think will have a huge bearing on their success next year, Honda is in a rough spot. They have the worst bike on the grid by a fairly wide margin. At least the Yamaha can finish races without hurting its riders. And ahead of next year, they re-signed both of their riders. Which is weird, right? Like, I can't be the only one who was completely shocked when I heard that Joan Mir re-signed with Honda. He has been vocal about how much he hates that bike and how he doesn't think it's going anywhere. And then all of a sudden he puts out the most generic, "Oh man, I'm so happy to be riding with Honda again next year. I think this could go very well." Like, are you okay? Like, blink twice if you need help. Anyway, Joan Mir has been maybe the most vocal Honda hater in the past couple of years, calling the bike literally unrideable. Now, Mir is clearly a great rider. He won a championship just 4 years ago. But Honda is in a rough spot. And that whole issue is worthy of its own video, but long story short, I simply don't see this team being competitive regardless, and honestly, while they have good riders on their team, with Joan Mir having proven he's good and Luca Marini being, I mean, he's alright, I don't expect them to produce a bike next year that will make use of Joan Mir's talents exceptionally well, and I'm pretty shocked. Now, in addition to Mir, Honda retains Luca Marini, who even on a Ducati machine only found limited success, and on the Honda machine, he's only scored 1 point. That's not great, and while it may be indicative of Honda's problems more than Marini's problems, I'm just not sure that he's the rider who you want to stick with if you're trying to get yourself out of the mud like this. Honda is in a rough spot, and it really surprises me that they didn't make a shift to more prominent test riders. I think that maybe Jack Miller could have been a good pickup for them, considering how much work they still have left to do. And right now, initial reports from like the Misano test, it seems like no one's that excited. So, all in all, I think that keeping things the same here might end up being a net negative for them, especially if Joan Mir continues to have such a negative mindset, which I don't think he's wrong for having, but, you know, re-signing with someone who you've been so vocally negative about in the past, we might see some drama come 2025, 2026. Overall, I'm going to have to give them a real low C-. It's barely not a D+, but, I mean, they signed good riders. Like, I can't hate on Joan Mir by any means, so you know, being able to retain him I think was good for them, but if it ends up causing problems down the road, Alright. Next we have... God damn it. Why did I do this with... I should have just put these in an order. This gimmick was not worth it. VR46 Ducati. I don't know why I'm holding it up like you're going to be able to read that. Okay. Honestly, the VR46 team was one of the hardest for me to rank in my mind, because if you ask me how I think they'll be, the answer is, like, fine. Like, they'll be good. I don't think they're going to win a championship, but they'll be good. So, VR46 re-signed Fabio Di Giannantonio and got him a factory bike for next year. And they also brought on new rider Franco Morbidelli, who is departing from Pramac Ducati. Morbidelli is currently the least successful Ducati rider on the grid, and he's on a GP24 this year. That doesn't really bode well for the future in my opinion. I think he's a clear step down from Marco Bezzecchi, and I think that there were better riders available. Like, if I'm not mistaken, Bastianini was still an option. Di Giannantonio is a rider that I struggle to quantify. Like, yes, he's very consistent, he gets good results, but he doesn't finish on the podium. With a good GP25, maybe he'll take a leap, maybe the bike will just be the best thing since God and he'll be one of the only potential competitors, but I don't know, it seems like maybe I'm just being optimistic, but to me it seems like the GP24 was sort of the peak in terms of like the differential between Ducati and everyone else, and I feel like everyone else is going to start to close in. I think as long as Aprilia doesn't screw up again, they'll close in. I think KTM's getting closer. Yamaha, once they roll out their V4, will maybe be competitive again, who knows, we'll see. And of course in 2027 anything could happen. Overall, I do think that Di Giannantonio on a GP25 will cancel out Bezzecchi leaving, and I'm going to have to say that I do think it will be a positive, if just barely. I'm going to give them a C+. Alright. Oh, let's get this one. This is a big one. This is one at the top of the page. I don't remember what I wrote here. We get to talk about Pramac Yamaha. I'm excited for this one. Pramac Yamaha. Where do I start? Let's get the elephant in the room out of the way. Pramac is switching from a Ducati satellite team to a Yamaha satellite team, ending a nearly 2-decade-long partnership with the Italian manufacturer, and giving every single manufacturer on the grid a satellite team as of 2025. Now, on the surface, moving from the best manufacturer on the grid to the second worst manufacturer on the grid seems like a stupid decision. And that's because it is, but they did have a reason for it. I just don't think it's smart. So basically, Pramac Yamaha this year was a factory-supported satellite team, meaning that they had the latest spec Ducati bikes. However, heading into next year, Ducati management indicated that they were a lot more interested in Valentino Rossi's VR46 team having a factory support next year instead of them. This didn't sit very well with Pramac team owner Paolo Campanati, who decided that he was so offended by this decision, he would instead look for another manufacturer to support. And he chose Yamaha. I have to assume they were the only ones calling. Now, apparently, Yamaha convinced Campanati with their development plan heading forward, but this is sort of weird because we just now heard that they were scrapping their inline 4 for a V4, and this really didn't seem to be the case until they hired their new technical director, whose name is escaping my mind right now. I'm sorry. What's his name? It's in my notes. Max Bartolini, until they hired Max Bartolini. And so, like, maybe they had like that in mind, and that's why they hired Bartolini in the first place, was because they knew they were going to switch to the V4. So now Pramac is in a situation where their V4 engine is only going to come in the 2027 season. They signed a 7-year contract, so that means that the first 2 years of their contract, they cannot even hope to be competitive. Although, this does inform their rider choice a little bit. Alright, after that long-ass yap session, let's actually talk about which riders they signed. Pramac signed Miguel Oliveira and Jack Miller. Allegedly. I mean, I'm recording this like the Wednesday before the Emilia-Romagna round, and Pramac said they're going to announce who it is, and like everyone knows it's going to be Jack Miller, but if it's not Jack Miller, I'm going to look really stupid and I'm going to have to re-record this segment. So let's get one thing out of the way. Neither of these riders were ever going to be competitive in 2025. I'm sorry. I like Jack Miller, but he's not going to touch your Bagnaiyas, your Marquezes, your Martins. He's just not able to do that. But what he is really good at, maybe the best on the grid at, is being a test and development rider. In fact, he's so good that it's rumored that Gigi Dall'Igna had him come in back to Ducati after he signed with Factory KTM to do some testing for them under the table. Like, Jack Miller is considered one of the most valuable test riders you can have in your paddock. Now, between Miller and Oliveira, the two of them have ridden for every other manufacturer on the grid. This means that they will be bringing every single possible perspective into Yamaha's new development project. And considering that Yamaha is trying to start from the ground up, having all of these perspectives from pretty good riders will actually be the most valuable thing that they probably could have done. That being said, I do think that that is overall a better move for the Yamaha manufacturer than it is for the actual team Pramac. While it may help them compete in 2027, I'm really not optimistic about this. And the only reason they're not getting an F is because I do see the vision here, but switching from Ducati to Yamaha just can't be ignored. Overall, I do have to give them a D+. Alright, getting down to it now. I don't remember how many we've done. Oh boy. This one's gonna suck. Gresini Racing. I'm a Gresini fan. This segment is painful to me. Mark was probably never going to stay. I get that. I never thought that Gresini was going to be a team that got a factory bike, and then when Mark very publicly came out and said, hey, a factory bike isn't enough, I want a factory ride, I knew it was over. I wasn't holding out hope or anything, but man, did it have to be this bad? Okay, I should stop hating. With no hope left, I watched the rider market slowly get filled, and every single Ducati seat, except for one, was taken. Now, this meant that, of course, Fermin Aldeguer was going to be saddled with Gresini Racing. Aldeguer was signed for the 2025 season back in 2023 after his incredible run at the end of that Moto2 season. Now, this contract may have been a bit premature, considering the fact that this season in Moto2 he has been way less than consistent. Seriously, look at this stretch of races from the middle of the season. What the fuck am I supposed to learn from this? What does this tell you about the person who finished like this? Regardless, he has shown flashes of brilliance, securing 2 wins and 4 podiums this season, and of course, that stretch at the end of last season was fantastic. There's no denying that. I understand why he was signed, but guys, it was so premature. No one else was going to do that. Like, you could have waited to at least see if he started this season well. Also, he seems like a cool guy. He seems like a fun dude. Look at this. Look at the announcement post that they made. That's funny. Like it's the cover of Nevermind by Nirvana. Do you get it? Do you get the joke? I don't know why I'm hating so much. I'm generationally hating right now. I truly have no clue what he'll be, and of the 3 rookies coming in next year, he's the one who could be the worst or he could be the best. On a Ducati, I am optimistic, but overall, he's just been so inconsistent that it's hard for me to say. In addition, Gresini held on to Alex Marquez, who's putting in decent results on the GP23 this year. While I don't think he's going to take the leap to championship contender on the GP24 racing against GP25s, I do think that a race win is not out of the question, and I am excited to see how he progresses. That being said, this season was great for Gresini. Marc Marquez is having a huge comeback season, and it's possible that he might get into this championship fight still, making him a pretty clear top 3 rider on the grid if he's able to do that. That being said, next season's pretty clearly going to be a step down, and unfortunately, I do have to give them a C-. Alright, we're getting down to it. We only have a few left. Oh boy. Let's talk about Factory Ducati. Okay, I need to preface this with the fact that I am a Marc Marquez fan. I mean, I'm not going to be the first in line to start the Church of 93 or anything, but I do like him. I grew up watching MotoGP, and he's one of the only riders left from my childhood on the grid, which means that I'm naturally gonna have a fondness for him. That being said, I do not think he is better than Jorge Martin. I do not think he was worth permanently alienating Jorge Martin from the Ducati brand just to sign him, especially when Jorge Martin is a young rider who's on the way up, and Mark, while he might be coming back, is definitely on the way down at this point. I don't think he'll ever reach the heights of 2019 again. I really, truly cannot understand why they chose to make the decision that they did, especially at the time, because at the time that they made the decision, all right, I need to back up. We need to talk about what this decision was. So basically, Factory Ducati had a decision to make. They had 3 great riders clamoring to try and get a factory ride with them. Marc Marquez, who was on the Gresini GP23 and putting in good results on his real comeback season after a series of injuries had taken him out for the past few years. They had Enea Bastianini, who's currently 4th in the championship, one of the fringe championship contenders remaining, and has been a very good rider for them. He meshes well with Bagnaia, they like each other, and Bagnaia even said, "This is the guy that I want as my teammate next year." While I do think that Pecco Bagnaia is the best all-around rider in the world right now, I think Martin is faster, and there's an important distinction there. Now, I don't like Jorge Martin very much. I'm sorry if that offends you, I just don't really like the guy. He's a great rider though. I can't deny that. He is the fastest rider on the grid. He's probably the 2nd best rider in the world, unless Marc Marquez has a crazy comeback run. Like, if this is just the start and Marc goes undefeated for the rest of the season, then we're going to have some conversations. So anyway, faced with this decision between these 3 great riders, probably numbers 2, 3, and 4 in the world right now, behind their other factory rider, they chose Jorge Martin. They said, hey, we're going to give Jorge the factory ride, we're going to give Marc Marquez a factory bike next year, probably on Pramac Ducati, and then all's going to be okay. Wrong. Marc Marquez came out and said very publicly, I don't want a factory bike, I want a factory ride. It is that or nothing for me. This forced Ducati's hand, and they were forced to immediately make a decision, Martin or Marquez. And after guaranteeing Martin the spot, they retracted their promise and decided to sign Marc Marquez instead. Now, admittedly, at the time, this decision seemed a lot worse than it was. At the time, Marquez was coming back, but he still hadn't won, and he was falling off the bike like almost every race. So, with the back-to-back wins in Aragon and Misano, it's sort of difficult to say that he's a worse rider than Bastianini at this point, but calling him a worse rider than Martin is definitely not a worse rider. Jorge Martin is the better rider, though. In 2024, I can't talk today. Martin was furious and immediately signed with Aprilia. Now, to me, this is a case of ego, and not that I think that ego is a bad thing. I think that you need to have some level of ego in order to be able to compete at this level of any sport, but these guys don't forget about stuff like this. He was promised a spot on the best bike next year, and it was revoked. So he left and went to a completely different factory. That is a level of hatred that it runs deep. I'm not sure that he'll want to come back to Ducati anytime soon, and whenever Marc Marquez decides to retire, Ducati might not be that good by that point, so they might be facing a real outside threat coming from Jorge Martin. I think that this move was really ill-advised. If they had just talked to everyone and said, hey Mark, what do you actually want? Instead of just assuming he'd be okay with the factory bike, this could have happened a lot less publicly, a lot less dramatically, and they might still have all 3 riders somewhere, and because of that, I'm going to have to give them an A- instead of an A or an A+. Alrighty, what do we have left? I haven't talked about Trackhouse, haven't talked about LCR, haven't talked about either of the KTM teams. Did I talk about... Oh, right, there's only 3 Ducati teams now. Alrighty. Trackhouse. What the fuck is a kilometer? Aprilia's only satellite team re-signed Raul Fernandez and promoted Ayagura from Moto2. Full disclosure, I'm somewhat of a fan of both of these riders, but I'll try to be as unbiased as possible here. First of all, let's talk about Raul Fernandez. Raul Fernandez is in his third season in MotoGP, and while he hasn't broken out as any sort of star yet, he has shown flashes of brilliance. A front row qualifying position at the Sachsenring and leading his home sprint in Catalunya before crashing out of the lead were both great moments for the season. I mean, crashing out of the lead was great until it really wasn't, but regardless, you get what I mean. Apparently, the team at Trackhouse is optimistic. They're a young team, and they think that his experience on the RSGP 23 and 24 will greatly help them with their bike development in the future. That being said, I probably would have chosen to keep Miguel Oliveira over him, but I do understand the vision here. So I'm going to let them cook, because here's what I see. I see a young team that wants young riders who don't have a whole lot of experience and are able to help them develop a bike the way that they want to, like they want to come up and help build this team and build something like from scratch with riders who are also building a legacy from scratch. How well do I think that's going to work? I don't know, but it's a nice thought. Onto the new signing, Ayagura. Ayagura is fast as hell. He rides the wheels off of his Empty Helmets MSI bike in Moto2, and he should probably be a Moto2 champion. But in 2022, he made some mistakes. He had the championship in the bag, like guaranteed his, and then he crashed out of the lead 2 races in a row. Just unnecessarily risky riding, and it sort of showed that he had a little bit of flaw in his skill. Now, that being said, since then, this is drastically improved. At the time of recording, he currently leads the Moto2 World Championship in 2024, and he's had 0 retirements this year. Ogura does seem to have learned from his mistakes, and he is my pick for who's probably going to be the most successful rookie next year. I think that he's the most consistent rider by far, and oh my god, that was terrible. Overall, I'm optimistic about their choices, and like I said, I'm just going to let them cook. Raul Fernandez can still break out and have a great season, and who knows what Ayagura is going to do on a MotoGP bike. He looks really fast in Moto2. That doesn't always translate, of course, but there's always the possibility that he's just fantastic. I'm going to give them a solid B. I'm cautiously optimistic. Alright. I've got 3 left? I think 3 left. I'm bad at math. It's not even math, I'm just counting. Factory KTM. Or Red Bull KTM. I guess they're both Red Bull KTM now. Factory KTM is in an interesting spot. It's easy to forget that at the start of the season, it was commonly believed that the RC16 was faster on the straights than the GP24. Now, while this has definitely changed throughout the course of the 2024 season, it is always possible that this transitions into a very fast KTM bike next year. Perhaps something pretty close to what Pol Espargaro has been testing in recent rounds. It could be an almost competitive bike, assuming that Ducati doesn't take another huge leap next year. In terms of rider signings, I think that the Factory KTM team did a great job. Brad Binder is the most competitive non-Ducati rider on the circuit right now. He is the highest point scoring rider who isn't really fighting for the championship in any capacity, and overall he is great. He's shown the capacity that he can win races, even if very occasionally, and he is consistent podium finisher. I am optimistic. I think on a competitive bike he could be competing for a championship. I'm not sure if he's going to be like a top 3 rider, but who knows? Anything could happen in any given year. After just 1 year with their satellite team GasGas Tech3, Pedro Acosta is moving up to a factory ride. This really isn't surprising. I think it was like one of the first rider moves announced this year, because Pedro was just so friggin' good out of the gate. Like, he is the second best non-Ducati rider this year. So they have the first and second best non-Ducati riders heading to their factory team next year. That's really solid. And he's already shown the capacity to win. He has the most podiums of any non-Ducati rider this year, and I would not be surprised at all if he ends up with a race win by the end of this season. Acosta's rookie season has been one of the most impressive in recent memory, probably since Marc Marquez's rookie championship campaign, unless I'm like really blatantly forgetting someone here. He's in just his 5th season at the World Championship level, and he already has a factory ride. That's pretty ridiculous nowadays. Basically, if KTM can produce a good bike, they have 2 serious title contenders on their hands now. Do I think that'll happen? Probably not, but regardless, I'm still going to give them an A. I think that they've built a great team. This video is so much longer than I thought it was going to be. If you're still here, thank you so much. You should smash that like button and absolutely eviscerate the subscribe button, baby. Fucking break that shit. Why can't I read it's Idemitsu and LCR Honda. I'm doing them as like one segment. I don't have a ton to say about LCR and Idemitsu Honda. They re-signed Johann Zarco, who Zarco was a strong rider for Ducati, but on the Honda, he unsurprisingly has not found much success. It's Honda in 2024. What else do you expect? I don't really have a whole lot to say about Zarco. He's a good re-signing. I don't think that, for a satellite Honda team, I'm not sure that there was like a better rider available who would even want that spot. So, pretty solid choice in my opinion. Now, what I do have thoughts on is the Idemitsu side of the garage, who promoted Somkiat Chantra up from Moto2. Now, let's get something out of the way. Chantra is a good rider, but this move still confuses me. Now, I understand that Idemitsu Honda is all about Asian heritage and promoting Asian talent. That being said, Chantra is like the 5th or 6th best rider on the Moto2 grid right now. So, the only way that I see this move having made sense is if Taka Nakagami said, hey, I'm retiring, and he said that like for sure after Ayagura was already signed, which meant that they had to scramble, and then they signed Somkiat Chantra, who is the 2nd most talented Asian rider in the Moto2 market. That being said, there are 4 or 5 riders who are just better than him in Moto2. So, like, I get it. I get it. I really do. And I'm not trying to hate on that mindset at all, but my thoughts are basically, unless Taka Nakagami was like, I want to retire right now, unless he said that to your face, which I don't think we've had any confirmed reports of that. I think he announced his retirement after they signed Chantra, which to me means they signed Chantra over re-signing Nakagami, which I think is a weird choice. Because one of 2 things could happen here. One, I think Nakagami's going to be a better rider next year than Chantra will. And 2, you could let Chantra cook like a little longer in Moto2. No one's gonna sign him because, like I said, there's 3, 4, 5 better riders still available next year. And considering how many teams made moves that seem to be long-term moves this year, I don't think there was any danger of him getting snatched up by another team next year unless he was breakout really good. And even then, you could just jump the gun anyway if you're willing to sign him this early. This is a really confusing move to me, but once again, Taka Nakagami wasn't moving any needles this year. He probably wouldn't next year, but I do think he would have a better chance of scoring you some points than Chantra did. So overall, for a team that is like not going to do anything anyway, it's just fine. It's literally fine. It's a C. It's just a C. All right, last team. Wow, it's Tech3 KTM, baby. Tech3 KTM. Please, Tech3, please, for the love of God, just give me this livery back. That's all I want. It looked so fucking good. Please just give it back. Oh my God, I don't care what else you do. I don't care. Just give me this one back. Sorry about that. It's a really good looking bike though. All right, in terms of sheer talent, Tech3 had the biggest improvement on the grid by far. I was really concerned when I heard that Pedro Acosta was going to be moving up, like from Tech3, because I assumed, oh, they're going to have Augusto Fernandez and like some other bum who, I shouldn't say that. They're all good riders, but they're going to have Augusto Fernandez and some middle of the pack tier rider, and they're never going to financially recover from losing Acosta here. I was so wrong. They ditched Fernandez, proceeded to sign Maverick Vinales and Enea Bastianini of all people. This is a team that is arguably better than their factory team in terms of sheer talent. Bastianini is one of only 2 fringe title contenders left in this season. I think it remains to be seen whether or not he's better or Mark is better, considering that Mark has just started to get his groove back, but he's definitely way up there in terms of the power rankings. Maverick Vinales has been putting up results that are okay with Aprilia, but on Yamaha, when Yamaha was still competitive, he was right up there competing for championships. So, you know, he has talent somewhere. Maybe it'll just take the right bike to bring it out. If KTM is that bike, I mean, this could seriously be a powerhouse team. Like, Vinales and Bastianini is nothing to scoff at. As much as I dislike Vinales, he is still a good rider, and Bastianini is one of the best out there right now. This is a ridiculous jump in talent, and if KTM can provide them with a competitive bike, this is going to be a really, really dangerous squad. I have to give them an A+. I mean, no one else made moves this good, in my opinion. I don't know how they attracted Enea Bastianini, of all people, to come to a satellite KTM team, but my God, this will be fun to watch, especially if they put him on that livery. Oh my God, I need that bike back. Fuck. All right, the hat it's empty, folks. We're out of teams, so that's how I think everyone stacks up. It'll probably all be on screen right now. It's over my face, so you can see who got what grade, who I think is in a good shape, and who I think is in bad shape. This isn't like a power rankings of like who I think is going to be best to worst. It's just who I think like set themselves up for the future. Anyway, let me know which ones I got right, which ones I got terribly wrong. Flame me in the comments, please. Give me a like. It really helps out with the YouTube algorithm. It's fantastic. If you enjoy content like this, subscribe. I mean, like, I've only got like 4 subscribers, so if you subscribe to this video right now, you're generating 20% of my subscriptions, and that lets me know what kind of content you want to see. This is sort of the first time I've covered more current events, so who knows? Maybe I'll start doing stuff like this more often if that's what people prefer. Sorry if I insulted your favorite rider. All of these guys are fantastic talents. They're a million times better than I'm ever going to be. It's just some of them are better relative to each other than others are, and that can't really be ignored. So I'm sorry if I dissed your favorite rider. I'm sure you have very valid reasons for liking them, but you're wrong. That's it. You're wrong and I'm right. And that's really it at the end of the day. Is I have my opinion is not my opinion, it's the right opinion. Please remember that. Thank you for watching, and have a fantastic day.